The old house stood alone, on a cliff overlooking the sea. It was a mansion. Once grand, now crumbling, Seabreeze Manor. Locals called it haunted. They whispered stories of strange noises and ghostly figures. Nobody dared to go near. The wind howled, waves crashed against the rocks, seagulls screeched, an eerie silence hung over the house. It was as if the house itself was watching, waiting. Arjun was a writer. He loved mysteries. His days were often spent weaving tales of intrigue and suspense, his mind always searching for the next great story. He had a knack for uncovering secrets, both in his writing and in life. His friends often joked that he was a detective in a writer's disguise. But little did they know, Arjun's own life was about to become a mystery, more thrilling than any he had ever written. One day he received a letter. It was unlike any he had ever seen, with an old-fashioned seal and a sense of foreboding that made his heart race. The envelope was worn, as if it had travelled through time itself to reach him. He hesitated for a moment, feeling a strange mix of excitement and dread. What could this letter possibly contain? It was from his great-aunt. She had died. The letter was her last message to him, written in a shaky hand that spoke of her final days. She had always been a mysterious figure in his life, a woman with a past shrouded in secrets. Her death had left many questions unanswered, and now it seemed she had one last secret to share. Her last wish? For him to visit Seabreeze Manor. The name alone sent shivers down his spine. It was a place he had heard of in hushed whispers, a mansion by the sea that was said to be haunted. His great-aunt had lived there in her youth, and now she wanted him to uncover its secrets. The letter hinted at a hidden treasure, a family legacy that had been lost to time. Intrigued, Arjun travelled to the coast. The journey was long and filled with a sense of anticipation. As he walked along the foggy coastline, the sound of the waves crashing against the rocks seemed to echo the beating of his heart. The mansion loomed in the distance, a dark silhouette against the setting sun. He felt a strange connection to this place, as if he had been here before in another life. The old caretaker greeted him. The man was frail and bent with age, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and sadness. He held a lantern that cast eerie shadows on the walls as he led Arjun inside. The caretaker's voice trembled as he spoke, warning Arjun of the dangers that lay ahead. "This house has a dark history," he said, "and it does not welcome strangers." His eyes were filled with fear. It was a fear that seemed to seep into the very walls of the mansion, a fear that had been cultivated over decades of isolation and mystery. The caretaker's haunted expression told Arjun that this was not just a job for him, it was a burden, a curse that he had carried for many years. Arjun felt a pang of sympathy, but also a growing determination to uncover the truth. "Leave while you still can," he warned. Arjun just smiled. He had heard such warnings before, in the stories he wrote and the tales he loved. But this was different. This was real, and he was not about to turn back now. The thrill of the unknown was too great, the promise of uncovering a hidden truth too enticing. He assured the caretaker that he would be fine, that he was not afraid of ghosts or legends. He didn't believe in ghosts. To him they were just stories, figments of the imagination. But as he stood in the dimly lit hallway, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. The air was thick with an unspoken tension, a sense of foreboding that made his skin crawl. He took a deep breath and reminded himself that he was here for a reason, that he had a mystery to solve. The house was dark, dusty, cobwebs hung everywhere. It was as if time had stood still within these walls, preserving the secrets and sorrows of the past. Each step he took stirred up clouds of dust, and the creaking floorboards seemed to whisper forgotten tales. The mansion was a labyrinth of rooms and corridors, each one more eerie than the last. But Arjun was undeterred. He had come too far to turn back now. The air was thick, heavy. Arjun felt a chill, but he ignored it. He started to explore. Each room held a piece of the puzzle, a clue to the mystery that had brought him here. He found old photographs, letters and artifacts that spoke of a life long forgotten. The more he uncovered, the more he realized that his great-aunt had been right. Seabreeze Manor was not just a house. It was a story waiting to be told, a mystery waiting to be solved, and Arjun was determined to uncover every last secret. That night, Arjun lay in bed. He couldn't sleep. The silence was broken by creaking floorboards and whispers. He felt a cold breath on his face. Suddenly, a hand touched his shoulder. He turned around. No one was there. He was terrified. What was happening? He tried to convince himself it was just the wind, but deep down he knew something was wrong. Something was in the house with him. The next day, Arjun explored the attic. He found an old portrait. It was a beautiful woman. She wore a white dress. Her eyes were sad. The caretaker told him the story. She was the owner's wife. Her name was Anya. One night she disappeared, never seen again. Some say her ghost still haunts the house. Arjun felt a chill. Could the cold touch have been Anya's? He had to know more. He continued to search the house for clues. Days turned into nights. Arjun heard more whispers. He saw shadows moving. He knew he wasn't alone. Anya was there. One night he saw her, a white figure gliding through the hallway. He tried to follow, but she vanished. He was sure it was Anya's ghost. Fear turned to fascination. He had to find out why Anya was still here. What was her unfinished business? He had to help her. Section 6. The Unveiling of a Dark Secret. Arjun found Anya's diary. It was hidden in the attic, covered in dust and cobwebs, as if it had been waiting for someone to discover it for years. The leather cover was worn and the pages were yellowed with age, but the words inside were still legible, telling a story that had been buried for far too long. He read about her life. Each page revealed more about Anya's world, her dreams, her hopes and her fears. She wrote about her love for her husband. A love that was once pure and strong, but had turned into a source of pain and terror. The diary entries were filled with vivid descriptions of her daily life, her interactions with her husband and the gradual change in his behavior, her love for her husband and her fear. Anya's words painted a picture of a woman who was deeply in love, but also deeply afraid. She described how her husband's demeanor changed over time, how his loving gestures turned into acts of control and manipulation. The fear in her writing was palpable, a stark contrast to the love she once felt. Her husband was a cruel man. He was not the man she had married. His cruelty knew no bounds, and he took pleasure in her suffering. Anya wrote about the emotional and physical abuse she endured, the isolation she felt, and the hopelessness that consumed her. She was trapped in a nightmare with no way out. He kept her prisoner in the house. Anya's diary detailed how she was confined to the house, unable to leave or seek help. The windows were barred, and the doors were always locked. She was a prisoner in her own home, living in constant fear of her husband's wrath. Her once vibrant spirit was slowly being crushed under the weight of his oppression. One day, Anya found out, she discovered a hidden letter, a letter that revealed her husband's dark plans. The letter was from another woman, a woman who was unaware of Anya's existence. It spoke of love and promises, and it shattered Anya's already fragile world. She realized that her husband was planning to leave her to start a new life with this other woman. He was planning to leave her for another woman. The betrayal was too much for Anya to bear. She felt a mix of anger, sadness and fear. She knew that confronting her husband would be dangerous, but she couldn't keep silent. She had to do something, anything, to stop him. But her actions would have dire consequences. That night, he murdered her and hid her body. The confrontation turned violent. Anya's husband, in a fit of rage, attacked her. The details of that night were too horrific to imagine, but Anya's final diary entry hinted at the terror she felt in her last moments. Her husband, determined to erase any evidence of his crime, hid her body in the walls of the house. In the walls of the house. Arjun was horrified. As he read the final entries, Arjun felt a chill run down his spine. The realization that Anya's body was still in the house, entombed within its walls, was too much to bear. He could almost hear her cries for help, echoing through the empty rooms. The house that once held so much love was now a tomb of secrets and sorrow. So this was Anya's secret. She was murdered by her own husband and her body. The weight of the truth was overwhelming. Arjun dropped the diary, his hands trembling. He couldn't believe that such evil had taken place within these walls. Anya's secret was out, and it was more horrifying than he could have ever imagined. It was still entombed within the house. The house stood as a silent witness to the tragedy that had unfolded within its walls. Anya's spirit seemed to linger, her story now known to the world. The dark secret that had been hidden for so long was finally unveiled, but the pain and sorrow it carried would never be forgotten. Section 7. Trapped Forever. Arjun now understood. Anya wasn't just a ghost. She was a prisoner, trapped within the walls, with the spirit of her murderous husband. He had to help her. He had to free her. But how? He decided to find Anya's body and give her a proper burial. Maybe then she could rest. He searched the house from top to bottom. Finally he found it, a hidden room, behind a wall, Anya's remains. He had found her. Section 8. A shocking discovery. Arjun felt a cold hand on his shoulder. The sensation was chilling, sending shivers down his spine. He had been exploring the old mansion for hours, driven by an inexplicable urge to uncover its secrets. The air was thick with an eerie silence, broken only by the occasional creak of the wooden floorboards beneath his feet. He turned around. It was Anya. Her presence was both familiar and unsettling. Arjun had heard stories about the mansion's tragic past, but seeing Anya in the flesh, or rather in spirit, was something he hadn't anticipated. Her eyes were filled with a sorrow that seemed to transcend time. She was crying. He had freed her, or so he thought. The tears streaming down her face glistened in the dim light, each drop a testament to the pain she had endured. Arjun felt a pang of guilt, wondering if his actions had truly brought her peace or if he had merely stirred up old wounds. She reached out to touch his face. Her hand was cold, almost lifeless, yet there was a strange warmth in her touch. It was as if she was trying to convey a message, something that words could not express. Arjun stood still, his heart pounding in his chest, waiting for her to speak. But then he saw it. Her eyes. They glowed with an unnatural light, a stark contrast to the darkness that surrounded them. It was a sight that sent a wave of fear through Arjun, making him question everything he thought he knew about the supernatural. They weren't filled with gratitude. The expression on her face shifted, becoming more sinister with each passing second. Arjun's mind raced, trying to make sense of the sudden change. What had he done to provoke such a reaction? They were filled with rage, pure, unadulterated rage. It was a look that could pierce through the bravest of souls, and Arjun was no exception. He took a step back, his instincts screaming at him to run, but his feet felt rooted to the spot. He had made a terrible mistake. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. In his quest to uncover the truth, he had unleashed something far more dangerous than he could have ever imagined. The weight of his actions bore down on him, leaving him paralyzed with fear. Anya wasn't the only one, trapped in the house. The mansion was filled with restless spirits, each one more tormented than the last. Arjun could feel their presence, a suffocating force that seemed to close in on him from all sides. He realized that he was not just dealing with one ghost, but an entire legion of them. Her husband's spirit was still there, and it was furious. The air grew colder, and Arjun could sense another presence in the room. It was Anya's husband, a spirit consumed by anger and betrayal. His eyes burned with a hatred that was palpable, making it clear that he held Arjun responsible for his suffering. It had used Anya's ghost to lure Arjun to the house. The realization dawned on him with horrifying clarity. Anya's spirit had been a pawn in a much larger game, manipulated by her vengeful husband to bring Arjun into their world. He had walked right into their trap, and now there was no way out, to lure Arjun to the house. The mansion's dark history had ensnared him, and he was now a part of its twisted narrative. As the spirits closed in, Arjun knew that his only hope was to find a way to appease them, to right the wrongs of the past and bring peace to the tormented souls that haunted the mansion. Section 9. The haunting continues. Arjun tried to run, but it was too late. The house was alive. The walls seemed to close in on him. He was trapped, just like Anya. The last thing he saw was Anya's face. Her eyes burned with hatred. He realized he wasn't freeing her, he was joining her forever. The house on the cliff stood silent again. Seabreeze Manor still haunted by its prisoners, and now Arjun joined them. The haunting continues.